Good day, learners. I'm Gapuz. I'm a test preparations coach for the last 25 years, and I've been doing coaching classes for NCLEX RN, both here in the Philippines and internationally. I'm also an author of 2 test preparations guidebooks for the NCLEX RN, which are internationally published. My Western and my Eastern education has enabled me to come up with guidelines, which I call functional concepts. And these concepts are the ones that are helping nurses to deconstruct questions on the NCLEX RN. So I'd like to share with you some of these functional concepts as we engage in our learning sessions today. Good day, learners. Welcome to lesson number 34. And it could be a surprise for you since we've been talking about disease conditions from across all age groups. Sometimes we're talking about diagnostic procedures and drugs. This time around, let's talk about ourselves. So we will be discussing and learning together about nurses with disabilities.
I've gotta do, so I'm not crying.
So let me first highlight a question that was actually asked by one of our subscribers. Can a registered nurse who is quadriplegic work as a nurse? So before we answer that question, let us be guided by functional concepts. Remember, what are functional concepts? Well, a functional concept could be a word, a phrase, a sentence, or even a paragraph that will enable you to deconstruct questions on the NCLEX RN. So for this specific subject or topic, the first functional concept that we're going to go through would be this one. So the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability on employment. Thus, the ADA restricts questions that can be asked about an applicant's disability before a job offer is made. So thus, there is no need to ask a patient whether they want to be assigned to a nurse with disability. The nurse can simply explain her condition if and when the patient under her care asks. What matters the most is that we know what the nurse with disability can do, and therefore we have to align the tasks that are assigned to them in relation to their abilities. Okay. So employers should make reasonable accommodation to the known physical and mental limitations of the nurse with disability. Now, this actually is applicable to institutions with 15 employers or more, as is specified in the ADA. Therefore, let me highlight some nurses on wheelchair who were actually featured in the New Mobility magazine. So we have Karen McCullough, a neurosurgery intensive care nurse when she developed multiple sclerosis, which made her blind in one eye, deaf in one ear, and she initially used a cane when walking until she became wheelchair bound. And then we also have Michelle Keffart, who broke her neck on a fall. She had a cervical 5 injury and is quadriplegic. We also have the inspiring story of Andrea Dalzell, who was diagnosed with transverse myelitis when she was young, and eventually that condition led to hip dysplasia, and since age 12, she was wheelchair bound. And now she's working as a nurse. And we also have the story of Dawn Dubsky, who was a pediatric nurse when she contracted malaria in Ghana and in 2008. Now, this condition has led to the partial amputation of her arms and legs, and she's now a case manager, even with the partially amputated arms and legs. We also have the story of Gordon Nind, who is a mountaineering enthusiast, and he sustained a T9 injury from a 40-foot fall that eventually made him paraplegic. He now works as a licensed practical nurse.
You won't get away.
Now, having those inspiring stories that we've actually talked about, let's try to answer a question related to this concept. Who among the following individuals can be employed as a nurse if qualified? So let's go through it. A quadriplegic on a wheelchair, yes. And you might be asking, what can a quadriplegic nurse do? Well, they could actually work in a telephone triage center, or facility. A post-malaria victim with partially amputated arms and legs. We've shown you a while back a feature story about a nurse who had this condition, and she works as a case manager. Remember, these nurses are being hired for their knowledge, for their experience, and their insights about professional nursing practice. A person who uses a cane, yes. An individual who is blind in one eye. Remember the story of a nurse who has had multiple sclerosis? She still works as a nurse. So a person who is deaf in one ear, yes. One who is undergoing rehabilitation for substance abuse, well, this could be an impaired nurse. Some institutions actually allow these nurses to work either after rehabilitation or while undergoing rehabilitation. So we put a check, yes. Now, a non-nursing degree holder with 3 years experience as a caregiver, they don't possess the necessary professional qualifications to work as nurses. So we put an X because they don't have the degree. Okay, so the correct answers are options 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now, let's go back to the main question I posted a while back. Can a registered nurse who is quadriplegic work as a nurse? And the outstanding answer definitely is yes. And what can she do? She could actually work in a telephone triage facility. Now, here's another sample question. Which of the following tasks can be assigned to a nurse with paraplegia? Remember, a nurse with paraplegia is actually a wheelchair user. So can they perform CPR? Now, to perform CPR, you need the strength of your upper body and both your arms. Paraplegic nurse have weakness on the lower extremity. So definitely they can still perform CPR. Can they act as a patient advocate? Yes, they can. Can they carry out medication orders? Yes. Can they perform duties as a case manager? Yes. Can they implement control measures, infection control measures? Yes. One of the issues that they have to be specifically reminded about would be some of these paraplegic nurses who uses their wheelchair use their bare hands to roll over the wheels of their chairs, and they have to be given special instructions for them to know that that could be a risk for transmission of infection, and they have to be trained on how to deal with it. Can they perform patient triage? Yes. Can they apply restraints without a physician's order? No. Otherwise, if you apply restraints without a physician's order, could be held liable for battery, as well as you're trying to restrict the mobility and freedom of the patient. So that is actually considered as false imprisonment when you limit the freedom of mobility. So that's an X. So the correct answers are options 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Once again, it's shout out time for one of our passers from the province of La Union, Maureen Joy Mangahas, USRN. Congratulations for passing the NCLEX RN for the state of New York. We're so proud of you from your RA Gapuz family. So let's learn together. For more instructional videos, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Gapuz Mentors, and my Facebook page, Mentor Ray. If you have anything in mind that you want me to cover in my future videos, or if you're confused with some concepts and you want clarifications, please feel free to send me a note or a message through my email, mentor.raygapuz@gmail.com, and let's learn together. Disclaimer: the instructional tool is created to enable students to develop their test-taking skills. The question or questions and answers contained in this instructional video were patterned after the official publicly accessed samples from the RN test plan of the National Council of State Boards of Nursing, or NCSBN. The discussions and rationale presented in the video are based on the lecturer's research and are meant to provide an explanation for the answer or answers to the question or questions that is or are presented. The lecturer makes no claim, directly, implied, or otherwise, that the rationale discussed is officially endorsed by NCSBN.